We are privileged today to have a pair of very special guests all the way from Goa. They're involved in documentary production, editors and mentors for over 100 documentaries by students and early career filmmakers. Give us an idea of documentary filmmaking. Why documentary films? Why not something else?
I guess my journey to documentary filmmaking was through interest in people's movements, interest in working with people, interest in popular education.
It appears that it combines most of the interests that I have: writing, a bit of technology, a bit of storytelling, visual arts. This is the station in my life that I hoped for. Fortunately, I reached there. What is interesting is that there are so many materials, so many documentary films are being made, but most people are not aware of them. Documentary films are, by its very nature, political. So if you ask people, have you seen any documentary film? The answer would be invariably no. So there is this kind of disconnect between what is a practice that is flourishing in India, particularly with the introduction of digital technologies, but there is a lack of awareness of it and also a lack of writing around it or theorizing around it. As documentary filmmakers, we thought it is an important resource that we need to kind of create.
I think this is what made documentary in India a very diverse creature, very complex creature with stories being told in fascinating ways by people with very little resources but with a lot of passion about what they were saying.
Objective of this film is to kind of as a bulwark against the excesses of Bollywood or the feature film, because that's going to corrupt you. So you need to have a prophylactic dose so that people remain in touch with reality, or you bring him back into, or it's also had the role of educating you, creating awareness, and awareness it was thought would bring about behavior change. So it goes like this. എൻ്റെ ഗന്ധങ്ങളിൽ മുഴുകി ഞാൻ നിന്നെ തേടിയോ നിന്റെ ഗന്ധങ്ങളിൽ മുഴുകി ഞാൻ എന്നെ തേടിയോ. The title of the poem is Narcissus.
Welcome to this new episode of Against the Grain. We are privileged today to have a pair of very special guests all the way from Goa. Professor Anjali Monteiro and K.P. Jayasankar. They are former professors from the School of Media and Cultural Studies of the Tata Institute of Social Science. They're involved in documentary production, media teaching and research. They have been commissioning editors and mentors for over 100 documentaries by students and early career filmmakers. They were awarded the Satish Bahadur Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Film Education by the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad in 2022. Their documentary films, which have been screened across the world, have won 33 national and international awards. Their most recent award is a commendation of the jury for a delicate weave at the 16th RAI International Festival of Ethnographic Film in 2019. Their book, A Fly in the Curry on independent documentary, won a special mention for the best book on cinema at the National Film Awards in 2016. They have been visiting faculties and fellows at several leading media and design institutions and featured and lectured at universities across the world. So, welcome to Against the Grain, Anjali and Jayasankar. Give us an idea of what led you to documentary filmmaking? Why documentary films? Why not something else?
Well, I think each of us had our individual journeys that were rather different. I think I got into documentary filmmaking quite by accident, because I was never particularly interested in film or the moving image when I was young. I didn't have exposure to it, in those days we didn't have a camera at home, who went to cinemas, it was a once in a way thing. And I guess my journey to documentary filmmaking was through sort of interest in people's movements, interest in working with people, interest in popular education. And that's how I got into, working with educational media slideshows, and then from there into documentary filmmaking. So I would say it was kind of accidental, but once I got in there, I realized that, and in the beginning it was very challenging. I mean, there were many times when I thought I would not be able to make it because the learning curve was very steep and you know nothing. I mean, like it was, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So it was pretty tough, but I think at some point I felt, yes, this is the place I want to be.
In my case, I've always been interested in the creative, you know, aspects of, from writing to painting to design and, of course, film. But then I never thought I would be able to actualize all these interests in life. But then I somehow found my feet in documentary filmmaking, and it kind of, to me, it appears that it combines most of the interests that I have: writing, a bit of technology, a bit of storytelling, and visual arts, graphic design. So all that I find all that combined at this the site of documentary, converging at the site of documentary film. So that's why I'm here, and I think this is the station in my life that I hoped for. Fortunately, I reached there.
You are unique because not only have you made very impressive documentary films, which we'll go into. We'll look at some of my favorite films, and talk through them. But you have also written a book which is the artists reflecting on their art, which is rare. Very few artists bother to reflect so comprehensively on the art they are practicing. Your book has, as we said in the introduction, has won an award. So it's entitled "Fly in the Curry." I'm guessing as opposed to a fly on the wall, right? So tell us about what led you to that title? What are you trying to say actually?
You want to talk about? Okay.
You go ahead.
So, the idea of writing the book comes from the any lack of acknowledgement of this form in India, documentary film, because it's probably is a poor cousin to, narrative cinema, feature film, I guess, particularly Bollywood, the Hindi cinema, the Bombay Hindi cinema.
Or even Tamil cinema.
Yeah. That's right. Any of those narrative cinemas in India. And what is interesting is that there are so many materials, so many documentary films are being made, but most people are not aware of them. Simply because documentary films are, by its very nature, political. So it is an artifact that finds it difficult to kind of appear in public space because there's so much censorship in India, which continues. I mean, it's kind of, in fact, increased. So if you ask people, have you seen any documentary film? The answer would be invariably no. So there is this kind of disconnect between what is a practice that is flourishing in India, particularly with the introduction of digital technologies. But there is a lack of awareness of it, and also a lack of writing around it or theorizing around it. That's what was led us to. And as documentary filmmakers, we thought it is an important resource that we need to kind of create, so that this unacknowledged history of this genre kind of goes acknowledged in some sense.
So, as you said, why a fly in the curry? And in fact, when my niece heard the title, she asked, "Oh, is it a cookbook?" But yeah, so there is this formulation of the documentarist as an unobtrusive observer, like a fly on the wall. And opposed to that, a film theorist has coined the phrase "a fly in the soup." So we kind of Indianized it,
The
and
Desi version.
Desi version is a fly in the curry. And so our scope was not the whole of documentary film in India, which of course part of it is political, part of it is not. We have, our great films division stuff. Some of it is also interesting, but a lot of it is very statist. So our focus in the book was on films that in some way disturb the status quo, that question, that deal with issues that are uncomfortable, and not just in terms of content, but also in terms of the way the story is told, the form, and the diversity of form in Indian documentary, precisely because it has been kind of away from the market. A lot of the time, people have not been able to. There hasn't been a large market for documentary film, other than the state films, which had their own channels of distribution. So I think this is what made documentary in India a very diverse creature, very complex creature, with stories being told in fascinating ways by people with very little resources, but with a lot of passion about what they were saying. So this was something we wanted to bring out, and as Jayasankar said, we are also, since we are teachers, we found so little material on documentary film that we could use in our teaching. And also being a part of the fraternity, we had easy access both to the films as well as the filmmakers. So I guess that's how we started out writing this book.
So as a child growing up in India, my idea of the documentary was shaped by the films division documentary, which I think you mentioned extensively in your book. That was the concept we all had. A documentary is something that promotes, let's say, small savings, family planning, and things like civic sense, right? And documentaries in general, was my perception as I grew up, are intended to bring about some change. They have a kind of instrumental objective. It is meant to change behavior of people. But clearly you don't see a documentary as that.
If you were to look at the history of film division, their project was, in so many words, a prophylactic role.
During the interval of.
Oh, even before.
Before, in between, or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So that the ostensible objective of this film is to kind of as a bulwark against the excesses of the Bollywood or the feature film, because that's going to corrupt you. So you need to have a prophylactic dose so that people remain in touch with reality, or you bring him back into, or it's also had the role of educating you, creating awareness, and awareness it was thought would bring about behavior change.
There was this nationalist project as well, perhaps the idea that building India as a nation, a national identity through this. Was that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very much a project to build citizens in a particular mold, which, would make them subjects who would cooperate and who would understand what the nation was about, and to, do things that would sort of further the objectives of the nation. But as we know, the objectives of the nation are something that also need to be questioned. I mean, which nation, who decides, what are the people in power, and what choices do they make, and how do these choices affect people at the margins. So this was something that never was sort of looked at by documentary films that were factored in. There might have been an odd filmmaker here and there. There have been an odd film on caste made within films division. So there were a few filmmakers who did, question, but by and large it was a project of promoting the state's vision of modernity and development, and of getting the great Indian masses to participate in that project of modernity. So it was actually, I would say, in the 70s, around the time of the emergency, or maybe even a little later, that we have filmmakers, people like Anand Patwardhan, coming up and questioning this notion of the state very fundamentally,
Right, right. So we'll come to that, but before that, you said something very interesting that the films division documentary was a kind of prophylactic dose against the quote unquote corrupting influence of the main feature film, typically a Hindi film, or it could be a Tamil film or whatever. But that is ironical because this same project of nation building or nationalism was very much a central part of the cinema, the popular cinema of the 50s. Like, let's take the example of Raj Kapoor. I mean, most of Raj Kapoor's films are promoting a nation building or national identity kind of project, secularism, Nehruvian socialism type of projects, right? So why did you need a prophylactic dose? I mean, because they were already doing the work far more effectively, is it not?
Yes, but the formal elements like the music or dance, they were not. They were frivolous elements.
Supposedly, yes.
Supposedly, I mean, I'm the quote unquote
Quote, unquote.
frivolous elements, which you need to have a bitter pill, against those. So, you ward off the effects of those frivolous elements. Okay, you can go ahead, go along with the nationalist project, but there are other collateral damages that narrative brings about. So you basically ward against it, kind of bring you back into reality. And so the basic idea behind this is, which is also what is the basic tenet of censorship, is the idea that audiences are less powerful, a less powerful other. So they are swayed by the narrative.
They're dumb.
They are dumb, less powerful than you, less
Amenable to suggestion.
Yes.
They can be molded in
yes,
any way.
yeah, they are easily corrupted.
Which is of course not true.
Obviously not. All of us are, thinking beings, and we deal with what you see on the screen in our own ways. So the idea is that audiences are less powerful. Audiences are corrupted very easily by both the documentary form as well as the. That's why Anand Patwardhan film is a danger, or any film that kind of questions the state's agenda is a because people is going to change in that direction. But what you want is to mold them in a direction which is safe and secure and with in keeping with the state's agenda. So the idea that the bitter pill was given in the right kind of mode, and they were not political films, as Anjali said, but for very few films that actually question the social practice of or the cinematic form itself were not very rare in
You mean feature films? Or
No, documentary.
documentary films.
Because feature films did do that. There was like
Yeah.
Sujata, for example, which questioned caste.
Correct.
And so on. I mean, there are many examples.
Yeah, and which with the tradition continued. I mean, so-called art house films, which questioned, but
No, but I'm talking of before art house.
Yes.
Art house came later.
Yeah.
Popular films.
Yeah,
like
Sujata
was
or-
extremely popular.
yeah, or
Or Bhiga Zameen, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
These were extremely
or
popular.
an Achut Kanya or whatever. They were attempts at.
So if nation building was the project, then they seem to be doing the better job than the
No,
very
then-
unimaginative films division.
No, nation building in a sense that what was identified as the chief enemy in this tradition. And what we needed to do was to inject hypodermically the idea of modernity, which is liberating.
Which is
So all the traditional practices need to be, and what is now happening is a kind of a quote unquote return to a mythical past
yeah,
tradition.
that's happening now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would say that, fiction cinema is less amenable to control because there is excess there, an excess of emotion and excess of sexuality, for instance, so it's much more, even while it might sort of conform to the dominant social values, there are always moments of rupture, which are much, it's because it's not so instrumental like the documentaries that were made by the state. There's much more possibility for play and for audiences to get corrupted, you know.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why the idea of censorship, either for the documentary film or because we need to act as a kind of a patriarchal filter that kind of guards or protects your audience who are less powerful, who do not have the wherewithal to handle excesses, or they can easily be swayed.
Right.
So,
But the way I read A Fly in the Curry is you're questioning the very idea that documentaries have an instrumental goal, right? Or
Absolutely.
and that they can bring about change. So that, or they ought to bring about change. Whether they can or not is a different matter.
yeah.
They ought to bring about change. But that critique applies equally to the many of the so-called independent films, which are trying to, propagate an alternate vision or a different kind of propaganda, right? Or is that the wrong way of looking at it?
I would
Because your films don't do that. I'm going to come to your films later. So your critique as presented in A Fly in the Curry, as well as your practice as filmmakers, is consistent. You're saying that that's not what documentary cinema is about. And therefore, some of the independent cinema that you discussed prior to yours seems to be subject to, if not the same, at least a similar kind of failing. Would that be a correct understanding of?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, some of that alternative cinema, particularly in the initial years, independent
As
documentaries,
opposed to at films division.
yeah,
State
were
sponsored.
were eager to change the way people look at things,
Yes.
and
Again, that was the same. No? People are dumb, can be molded. Now, I'll mold them better than what films division is doing. But it's the
yeah.
same thing, is it not?
But yeah, I would say, but still, I feel they were more open ended, and because they were, in a sense, against the grain of, received.
Against the grain, that's what
Yes.
we are calling it.
Yeah, so against the grain of received wisdom, I think they were not able to really kind of change people, but they did possibly create a space for questioning, and I think that's something that sort of we strongly believe that documentary filmmaking is a mode of dialogue. It's not a mode of converting anybody to any point of view, or
That's
it's a mode of
that's revealed in the way you make your film.
yeah, it's a mode of bringing new worlds, confronting people with worlds different from their own, perhaps. And because as filmmakers, when we enter those worlds, we too are challenged, confronted. Sometimes, it's not so easy to understand. So, we would like to bring that process of learning from the field into the way we make our films. I mean, broadly, I don't know
If I
whether
may
you
add
would agree
something,
with me.
yeah, of course. If I may add something, it's that after screening a film, a documentary film is thought of as a different creature, which is very distinct from any other art form. I mean, I don't think even people think of it as an art form.
It is, for me, it is an art.
No. I mean, this is a popular imagination.
Yeah.
So, some of the questions that come up, at least probably not of recent vintage, but earlier on, is that what did you want to say through your film after having seen the
And
film?
what impact did your film have?
Precisely.
क्या हुआ उससे क्या हुआ तुमने बनाया?
So, you are a musician, and I don't think the audience will ask you,
What is the impact?
what did you want to say through your music?
Correct.
So that's not a question that's valid in that context.
It's not.
But why is it so valid here? Because of its strange horoscope of the beast called documentary, which is kind of comes from the idea of this prophylactic. So I make a documentary and show it to you so that there is some behavioral change in you or there is some modification in you. And if it and they want to know what is that agenda that I have. And obviously the agenda set by me and the agenda of change, what change is in what behavior change I expect you to have is also set by me. So that's precisely the question. But it's people even I don't think even in the context of feature film, it's the question is barely asked, as to what is the purpose or what is it that you want to say through this film.
Possibly because in a feature film, what you call the frivolous elements, the songs and all that, the story, the plot,
Yeah.
the dramatic, the denouement,
Right.
it gives you a pleasure that is sufficient. You've gone there for quote unquote entertainment, and you have been entertained.
Yeah. So in
You
the
had the popcorn if you can afford it. Now you can't, but in those days it was much cheaper.
So, people expect that documentary film to do something as an instrumental thing. And of course, people don't find themselves included in that magic circle of change, people or being changed, because they expect you to make a film so that you can change somebody. And nobody
Right.
belongs to that somebody.
Right. It's
You make
never
a
me, it's others.
Yeah.
I'm already at the best possible stage
Correct.
of my life.
Normal.
Understand?
I am normal.
I'm normal. These other people.
Less powerful others.
Unspecified.
Yeah.
Less powerful others need to be changed.
Less-
And is your film capable of doing it? This is the question that's being asked.
Correct.
Okay, I mean, to put it very trivially, you make a film on, say, cleanliness or anti-smoking, and irrespective of the fact that you yourself might be a smoker, but you want to so-called, and there's a word that's always used, target audience.
Target
So it's a very militaristic term, you kind of bombard them. Yeah.
You shoot on the camera and you shoot at
Somebody so that they will change there.
they will change.
And if you ask them, they say, no, it's not for me, it's from people from, I don't want to say the name of the state, but which is sort of as less
XYZ, less
deviant.
developed state.
Yes.
Or poorer
Yes.
state.
Those people will change seeing your film.
Correct.
We don't need it.
They'll become
I don't-
cleaner, have fewer
Yeah.
babies, and so on.
I don't need it because we are already reached that point of,
Yeah,
and then we need to educate these quote unquote masses. In fact, the word mass media itself comes from that idea.
Comes from that. And there's this other element in which, in your book, you critique, which is the idea that the documentary has an evidentiary value. It's like something that uncovers a pre-existing reality out there, and the documentarist's job is to uncover, in some sort of unbiased fashion, that pre-existing reality. So you critique that.
In fact, Marquez, we kind of refer to a story from Marquez,
Marquez,
yeah, where I think Buendio gets a camera and then daguerreotype, and he documents each inch of the room that he is living in, and his contention was that if God existed, he will show up in one of those frames. So the idea that the camera itself is an instrument which can kind of discovery and actually it's an objective neutral this thing which will kind of bring
it's a telescope that will show me the moons of Jupiter if they exist.
Yes, and it's quote unquote a truthful objective depiction of what is out there,
Non-repudiable, cannot
Correct.
be denied.
So
See, I
that-
found the moon. So.
yes,
Which is why a fly on the wall,
Fly on the
A fly on the wall has no point of view.
it
Sees everything.
Yeah, but where the fly is sitting, what it chooses to see, what it doesn't see, or what it chooses not to show you. So all that is so the idea of the camera is actually when you say fly in this curry, that what is he saying, that camera is actually not objectively capturing reality, but actually changing realities. The fact that there's a camera here changes my behavior.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah, I might want
that
to appear.
applies to quantum particles and
Yes, it's
as
like
well as
something
to us.
like, yes, Heisenberg or
All of that, yes. Let's come to your actual films, and my favorite film, which I call the Sholay of the documentary, independent documentary cinema of India, is Nata. It might, I don't know if that surprises you, but I think it's absolutely the Sholay because it incorporates all these the strands that you go through in your book, Fly in the Curry. Specifically, it's a film within a film, right? And the film within a film is actually what these two people in Dharavi are making, Vakar Bhai and Bhau Kodi, is subject to precisely the same failings that you criticize in your book, right? You say that a film shouldn't be there to make changes and should not be the objective of a documentary film. But that is precisely the objective of this film that Vakar and Bhau Kode are making, and it is spectacularly successful. Unlike you see, I don't know how many people started using condoms after watching the films division documentary on family planning, but certainly there was an impact. Now, we've just said that impact question of what was the impact of your film it should not arise because it's a work of art. But Vakar and Bhau did it precisely for the impact, and they measured its success on the basis of their perception of the impact it had. So, I mean, it's a wonderful irony that your own praxis and the film within the film, there's a kind of dialectical tension between the two, and that is what makes it for me the Sholay of independent film. So,
Yeah.
I mean, tell us more about what led you to that film, uh, and was this an accidental discovery? Was this what's it called, serendipity of some sort? Because it's a very significant film, in my opinion.
Anjali, can go on.
Yeah, it's a tough question because I think we were sort of working with the idea of doing a film in Dharavi for many, many years before we actually made Natha. Maybe even about 6 or 7 years, like right from the uh, 95, 96, we were.
Yeah, I know you were struggling to, and you
We
didn't
were
know.
struggling, yeah. We were going there, we were meeting people, we even recorded stuff, for instance, the leather tanning industry and all, which later when we actually made the film was no longer there. So, but we couldn't kind of find a peg to hang the story on. We knew that we wanted to show the kind of energy of that space, the hope, the way in which survival pans out there, and somehow it was just not coming together. But when we, in fact, Bhau brought Vakar to us when Vakar was making. He had already made that Hum Sab Ek Hain, and he was thinking of making his first film, and he brought him to us.
The photograph called Hamsa
Hum
Bek.
Sab Ek Hai,
Yeah.
which he made. He had already made
It was
that.
an iconic image.
Absolutely. And he was wanting to make a film.
So tell us about that image. It was what
So,
Hindu, Sikh,
yeah, it was 4 boys. It's a picture of 4 boys, a
dressed
Hindu,
up as
dressed up as a Christian, Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh. And there's a slogan, there's a kind of a flag of India in the background, and there's a slogan which
Hum
says,
Sab Ek.
Hum Sab Ek Hai. Which became extremely popular. And in fact, in the film too, Vakar Bhai talks about, how he kind of auditioned children for the film and, found these. They were all Muslim children, interestingly. And
So from Vakar's extended family, perhaps.
yeah, but he just from the community that he was living in, yeah. And nobody was willing to, so he wanted to also have this kind of stereotypical representation of a Hindu as, with a Brahmin and so on, the visual markers of religious identity. And he couldn't find any Muslim boy who was willing
whose
to,
parents were
whose
willing
parents were willing to allow him to look like a Hindu. So he asked his own son to do that, to shave his head and to have a choti and to,
I know,
appear
he
like
says
a.
in the film,
He
मैंने
says in the
उसको
film.
आदेश दिया
Yeah.
करना पड़ेगा.
And in fact, he did come into a lot of criticism from the community
I'm sure he
itself
did.
for doing that, which he doesn't choose to talk about in the film, but that's fine. So, Bhau brought Vakar to us, and we thought that this would be a very interesting story to follow. This person making his first film, and also we knew that Dharavi being the kind of space it is, something like this becomes an event in which the whole community or multiple communities participate. So we thought that that energy would be something interesting to kind of foreground in the film. So that's how we started. I think sometime in 2001, in fact, he started. He made his first film, and we started following that process. And he had like the works, Digibeta, and got a lot of technicians from, because there were a lot of technicians who live in Dharavi who work in the industry. So he had much kind of superior equipment to what we had. We had a little.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had a little.
So that's another irony there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here you
Little
are these
camera.
professional filmmakers coming with the inferior equipment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He had the crane and the works he shot in a studio in in close to us. So it was actually quite an interesting process for us to see how they visualized and the whole process of
Right.
making that film. It was quite marvelous. I think we learned a lot through that process, and we were humbled by that process.
Starting from the better equipment, they were
Absolutely.
further humbling down the line.
Yes. and then somewhere along the way we said, well, why only tell the story of Bhav and Vakar? Why don't we bring ourselves into the film? And we did it with a lot of trepidation. Maybe Jayasankar could talk about that.
So the question was, what is it that we are doing? We are bringing the story of this honorable work Bhau and Vakar are doing to the audience, and also bringing the story of Dharavi. And how do we kind of make this feel-good story kind of work for all of us in that sense? Otherwise, we are also honorable. Bhau and
we are
Vakar
all
are
good
all
guys
good
and-
guys, and here is the story that we are bringing to you, so that you can learn, become aware. So we decided to puncture it, in the sense that by inserting ourselves into which is counterintuitive, because normally you filmmakers don't appear, flies don't appear in the
curry.
in the curry. They just kind of say, forget that I'm here, forget the cameras, pretend that we don't hear. We act normally.
And the invisible god.
Yes, act normally, which is itself is an oxymoron.
It's an
Yeah. So then we thought we should insert. So it's not. We identified some of the stories in our lives which kind of bring us close to this idea of so-called religious kind of tensions and communal harmony. So we identified some of the stories. There was our stories, but it could be anybody's story, any other audience or person watching, and any other person who's watching this film. So we decided to put that in. But then, we were a little worried about how you maintain a distance from the story, but at the same time tell it. There is also, it could be there's a thin line between self-indulgence and self-reflexivity.
Correct.
So then we decided to identify those stories which kind of work with the story of Bhau and Vakar, who are all first-generation migrants into the city. So are we.
So are you.
Yeah. and our daughters. Is her idea of how she kind of negotiates this hybrid identity of hers. Yeah.
Hybrid.
Yes. So we decided to put.
Because you're from Kerala and she's Goan, right?
Yes.
And also,
And
he's born a Hindu and I'm born a
Born a Christian.
Christian.
So, and she negotiates it in her own way, and she resolves it in her own way. So those are the stories at present day. So after having said that, okay, we will bring our stories, and we wanted to know how we bring it in. So we decided to do objects in our former lives. So objects,
Toothbrush, I remember.
yes, toothbrush and various other objects which are dear to us, which actually are territorial markers.
Right.
My toothbrush, you don't touch it,
Right.
even between us. This is my toothbrush.
It's
My
personal property.
precisely. Those objects which are worthless are become my identity. They mark, because if you had owned it, it could have become yours, and you would also treat it the same way as I would.
Right.
So precisely like the stories, they were our stories because we own it. But you can also tell the stories, about. So it could belong to you. So those spaces within the film became sites where anybody could enter and tell the story, and they also kind of disrupted the narrative. This feel-good story, because it's like something like a Brechtian alienation effect, or a Vidushak in a
Right.
comic relief. You says turn around and say what's going on here.
Fremdung.
Verfremdung effect. Yeah. So something like that is what we thought we'll do.
Yeah, I think it works very well.
So you can see how, in terms of its reception, you probably Anjali can talk about.
Yeah, and also I'd like to add another thing here. We decided to use a very clinical, sanitized kind of white space within which these objects appeared.
Yes.
It was like almost an ironical, tongue-in-cheek kind of comment on our own, sanitized middle-class spaces that we guard, against the chaos outside from those slums out there, or poor people out
An
there.
encroachment from.
Yeah, our 1 BHK or 2 BHK or 3 BHK that we.
My castle, as it were.
Yes, yes. So it was, in a sense, we sort of heightened the contrast between this white, clinical, and quiet space, because the stories were told in absolute silence in our stories. Whereas the space outside Dharavi is, you could almost smell it through the visuals. It was chaotic, but it was so full of energy and life, So somewhere it was also an ironic reflection on our middle class identities. But so when we made the film and we screened it, I remember the first screening was somewhere in Ahmedabad, showed it in an institution, and the first response was from people, so, oh, it's very good, you're telling all these stories, and, people need to know about this good work that's going on. But will people understand your stories that you've put into the film?
Okay.
Those
The toothbrush.
the toothbrush walas, yeah.
What
So,
was this doing?
because it's very abstract and people will not understand it. The masses will not understand it.
So this whole.
Yeah. So to us it was like, how people like us bracket ourselves out of.
Arrogate to ourselves. some
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely. Whereas our putting the stories in was precisely
To
an
deconstruct
attempt
it.
to,
To pull you in, to pull you
in, but
Inclusion.
yeah, that we all, and when we showed it in Dharavi, so we did a Hindi version of it also, and we had a big public screening in Dharavi where all the Mohalla committee hastis came, Ribeiro and the other police, Satish Sahni and all of them. And we had a very interesting response. I mean, people didn't feel alienated by those stories, In fact, they were curious about it, So, क्यों डाला है, क्या लगता है?
And it's
yeah.
not like they. Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, I think somebody said कि no, अभी हमें मालूम पड़ता है कि जो 6 माले में 12 माले में रहते हैं वो क्या उनका जीवन कैसा है, वो क्या सोचते हैं,
उनका भी toothbrush.
क्या सोचते हैं.
उनका भी toothbrush.
So there was an interest in those images because they were different, and they sparked curiosity, and in fact Vakar Bhai, there's an image of a coconut that
Yes,
breaks
I know.
open and that joins. So Vakar
Half.
Bhai, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not half
I'm not half
Malayali
this
and
or half
half
that.
Goan. I'm full both.
Yes. But I really like that image of the coconut
Yeah.
breaking and coming together. So,
That's why I call it the Sholay of the. These are all these iconic scenes, like.
In fact, it's interesting. I mean, we refer back to the earlier discussion about film division, the idea of impact, the idea of audiences, prophylactic effect of these artifacts. You know, when people ask you, well, people understand those. I understand it. These are fine. There's metaphorical kind of coconuts and other objects. Oh, it works for me. But they will not work for the common people.
That's nonsense.
That's what, obviously. So, when you watch something, what are you doing? You're not watching it so that you get something out of it, or you establish a dialogue or negotiate with it.
Correct.
You're watching it on behalf of everybody else other than you who will not understand.
Target audience, which you have fantasized and brought into existence.
It's a proto censorship at work here. Proto censorship at work here. I mean, before I show it to those masses, I need to understand how this is going to work on them.
Right.
You're not kind of giving them any agency at all.
You're not.
They won't be able to handle it. Please don't do it. So then, in fact, we actually ate a humble pie and made another film, short a film, which is removing all those, and we called it Hum Sab
AK.
Ek Hai.
You shouldn't have done that.
No,
Anyway,
why? I'll tell you why. Because that should not come in the way of
People using
people
the film.
using that film. Because all these activists, middle class activists who are speaking to us, will not screen the film for the masses because these elements are there. Now at least it motivates them to show it, because then it is unmediated story of Vakar and Bao's work, and it goes into people and you emulate them side of it. And so that's an interesting part of it. And so that says a lot about how people watch.
But in fact, people finally took Nata. Hum Sab died a natural death. It was
Yeah.
not screened that much.
Around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nata is complete in itself.
Yeah.
And in fact, when we showed Nata in many places, they've already seen Vakar. And that's where we realize our own folly in some sense, because what we hope to create impact, and people are saying this, oh, interesting, what is this, but you should have done it differently. But when Vakar shows his film in Dharavi, people just, not only is Hums Up, he has made another film, I'll come back to it, the people will just kind of get involved in those films. Scream, shout, clap, laugh, and then probably undergo change.
Probably undergo change.
Change, because I can't hope to do that. I have this bunch of people who are kind of looking at the screen to see what change it will bring about somebody else.
Some other
Yeah, people from Bihar, or some other states of that kind, which mythical other.
Mythical target audience, which they have purely brought up by their own fantasy.
Yeah. No, in fact, Anjali spoke about that image of four boys, and so I can also raise. It's been written about by various other scholars. I can say that, why four boys there? Why not four girls?
Or two girls and two boys.
Two boys and two girls. Why have?
You're not
why
being
do
inclusive.
correct? Why do they have? Why do you have to have? Who has given a Brahmin priest to represent me or a Christian priest to represent me as a Christian? So obviously, even if you were to incorporate all that, they would become like those images that appear in insert your photo here, it's just a shadow figure.
Identicator.
In algebra, it's called a null set. It would be nothing because everything would be eliminated.
Right. So you have one of those Facebook, if you don't add a picture, it will come a shadowy figure appears. So it could be four of those. And Hum Sab Ek Hai, which also should work. But Vakar doesn't bother about it.
Correct.
So it's a question of what we call the text and its context. So he's using it because he thinks that it's going to work. So it might have other impact, but he's not bothered about that. So any text for that matter is a context dependent. So it's a knife in the hands of a to use a metaphor, that in the hands of a surgeon can save somebody, but in the hands of somebody else who has other agendas can kind of, so it's not the per se the artifact. So that's what we learned out of it. In fact, Wakar's film is the first film that we made, Hamsa Ek Hai, is set in the context of Gujarat earthquake.
Right.
And then many people die. So there are a Muslim boy and a Hindu boy. And the Hindu boy is actually a story that he read. Is rescued by the Muslim man, and the Muslim boy is rescued by the Hindu man, and they need blood transfusion, and the Hindu man's blood doesn't
Goes into the Muslim.
and hum sab ek hai. So, and it is, if you see the picturization itself, it's kind of straight away transfused from one to the other. I mean, he doesn't bother about various other
Medical verisimilitude.
Niceties like
he
blood
doesn't bother.
group.
Yeah, blood group, of course, it doesn't match. Things like infection passing
Those
on
things don't matter.
don't matter because he's kind of
It's a metaphorical.
yes. So in fact, we told us we laughed at that. I mean, what kind of simplistic
When we
idea?
first heard the story.
But then towards the end, I began to shoot for Wakar. He will bring Hastis, and I shoot for him
His second.
in our studio
He became a cameraman
for him.
for him.
But I just thought, it's a humbling experience. Here is a man whom I need to kind of learn from.
Correct.
Though he is not educated in the sense we understand.
Yes.
So one of your, I think, earliest films was the Ankara, which that left a very lasting impression on me. So can you tell us something about that film, how it came about?
Okay, so Ankar was a film that we made around 94, 95, and we collaborated with a group called Kashtakari Sangatna, which was working to organize the tribals around various issues of survival and their rights. And alongside, they were collecting these absolutely fascinating stories, traditional stories that were being told by the storytellers, and that were fast disappearing because they wanted to, young people from the Adivasi community to relate to these stories. And so they had a fellow activist who was a painter, was an artist, who would paint these stories, was being said. So when we came to know about this, we thought it would be interesting to collaborate with Kashtakari Sangatna, kind of telling these stories. So we began working on this film, and then as we were working on this film, we had this, in a sense, Naka, which came much later, but a similar kind of a discomfort with who are we to tell these stories, and why should we only tell these stories, as people who are not from the Adivasi community, and why not bring in our own stories?
Right.
And of course, there is a long history of stories that we have told about Adivasis that you find in the archives, right, from the first British administrators who came across the Wardis. So we sort of did that research, and we chose, things that the outsider had said about Adivasis, and juxtapose. And of course, that's not a simple narrative. It's also complex, and there are all kinds of different stories that come out. And we decided to juxtapose it with the stories that the Adivasis, specifically the Warli community, tells about themselves. And these stories were very profound, and they sort of provide an alternative social history of how the outsider came in, of how the outsider usurped the Adivasi's wife and women, and how the outsider kind of brought alcohol into the community. So these were absolutely fascinating stories.
Yeah, so you would find the same kind of impulses there. Like strangely, we have kind of repeated ourselves probably in different forms in our different films. The same idea that we need to kind of disrupt the narrative. fair frienddoms in a different way. So probably that makes our film very boring, but at the same time it has some kind of
No, it certainly doesn't make it.
kind of some kind of
fascinating.
continuity at the same time discontinuity. So
It's kind of a light motif in there.
yes, that's been our leitmotif. So it comes from the feeling that, particularly in the Adivasi context, all their material wealth has been taken away. Their land has been alienated.
And it's continuously being taken away.
Yes, and now we are alienating their cultural wealth, Wali paintings, which we kind of. And the interesting part about these paintings is that anybody can paint them because they don't have a signature in the corner saying that I painted this.
There's no copyright.
There's no copyright there. So it is, since there's no copyright, everybody paints the same way. It's not that your style is different from mine. It's a communitarian resource. So therefore it's easy to take it away. Because even if I paint it, the signature is imitated. But whereas in a classical painting, who was painted in the corner makes that painting valuable.
That's the European individual model. The Rembrandt ka painting hai.
Yes, precisely.
Escher ka hai.
Precisely. So, and what we found very uncanny is that their relationship with their cultural resources is same as their relationship with their material wealth.
Right.
They didn't have a piece of paper which said that this land belonged to me. So it could be taken away. The same. They don't have a paper or they don't have the idea of ownership of these cultural resources. So that's where this whole idea of why are we now taking this away, and so which has been a thread that kind of continues in our work wherever we work with. We have worked with various communities across different settings in India, but most of the time we ask this question: what is it that we're doing here? What is it that brings us to here? And what right do we have to, quote unquote, appropriate those narratives and bring it to an audience? And what is the kind of relationship of power and resistance that is inherent in this act of storytelling?
Right.
And most of our work is kind of also, we have had the privilege to work with from Bakar, the Adivas. They have profound stories. In fact, there is a story that we are very dear to us. It's said by an activist filmmaker called P.V. Satish. He works with, he used to, it's no more. Amazing work that he did where he worked with Dalit women in a place called Pastapur in Telangana. So he has a story about this boatman and a scholar, probably an upper caste scholar, and they were crossing the river, and the Brahmin or the upper caste asked you, have you read Rig Veda? So he said, no, I haven't read it. So a quarter of his life is gone. Said, have you read Atharva Veda? So he said, no, half is gone. And there was a big storm, and the boatman asked the Brahmin, do you know how to swim? He says, no, all your life is gone.
Yes.
So the idea that the hegemonic idea of the written word, what is knowledge itself is prescribed and proscribed elsewhere.
Right.
So the stories of this Adivasi family is worthless.
Yeah.
Because where do knowledge reside? It's within the walls of a university or hallowed spaces like that.
Or in some covers of a book.
Yes. So that's precisely what we have learned in the process. We have kind of had the privilege to educate ourselves from spaces where normally thought of as not conducive to any learning.
Right.
But where you go and teach through your films or other kind of resources, prophylactic doses of films that you make.
So one of the other leitmotifs in your work is this city, the city of Mumbai, where we are right now. And I think one of the most spectacular visual examples, apart from Nata, where you have this luscious imagery of Dharavi. I mean, it sounds like a contradiction, luscious and Dharavi. But it's brilliant imagery. The other film is Sacha, the Loom, which is very much based in the city around the textile industry, which is now disappeared. And the paintings of, the poetry of Narayan Surve and the paintings of Sujeet Bhatt. Narayan Surve's poetry is again rooted in the city. Sujeet Bhatt only paints about Mumbai. So, and your fascination with the city is evident in many films. So, how was Sacha conceptualized? What's your relationship to this city?
It actually,
because you don't come from here, you were not born here, you
we
were
first
immigrants.
generation.
But this is what we call home.
This is what you call home. Even though now we have moved to Goa, correct? So it's still home. So what is this? The city clearly plays a major role in your imagination, in your emotional universe. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think it first, the project itself started out with a fascination with Sudhir's work, which we've always done. And I remember, I think the first time we sort of thought, let's make a film with Sudhir, was when we went to Bharat Bhavan and we saw the original
The train
wala
painting,
which was at that time peeling there. We felt really bad about it, and we said we must make a film about Sudhir's relationship to the city, and of course our relationship to the city also through that. And then we thought, well, why not? Because we never like to have, by and large, a film with just one voice. Why not juxtapose it with the word? And we were wondering like what we could use, and we came across Surve's poetry and found it so visceral and powerful, and we thought it would be a very interesting kind of counterfoil to Sudhir's images, because these two figures come from very different social backgrounds, have had very different life journeys, and yet both of them deal with this the space of the working class with such sensitivity and beauty. And of course, we too wanted to bring in our images of that space, because that was a space that was fast changing at the time we were making the film, because the mills were getting closed down, and the gentrification had not really, it was just a beginning to happen. And so we thought that these three together would make an interesting reflection on a city that's changing us sort of beyond our control, a city that all of us love, and in some sense we wanted to celebrate this life that was fast slipping away as this mill areas became some completely alternative space.
No, fascination for the city is also is manifold, because I'm beyond a historian, but whatever little history of the city we know, that when the British inherited the city from Portuguese, Gaudi, it was conceptualized as for want of a better word, a secular space, because the British wanted to kind of bring in workforce from elsewhere to the city, attract workforce to the city, to keep their imperialist or capitalist machinery going. So that is one of the guarantee that they probably provided, is that you can come and practice your religion or faith here. Unlike the Portuguese, have a different aspect, have a different attitude towards
different worldview.
And they came during the Inquisition. So probably, so in its DNA, I would again reiterate that the DNA of the city, there is some secular energy that is inherent. So which is what brought us here as well. It is a city. And 2/3 of the population of the world is going to live in cities. And cities are great beacons, of hope. So we are also first generation migrants, and the city kind of accepted us. But the difficulty, we got into it. But then once we were within the vortex, we kind of were sucked in there, and we found the space, and we found each other as well here, and we found meaning in our lives. We found our work, So it's a city that made us possible, and it's probably, this is the story of many people who migrate here, who come here, Wakar,
Wakar himself is
yes. Yeah. So that's why our fascination with the city. We wish we could have made more film, but though we didn't make many films, we had the privilege to work with our students who made uh, hundreds of films on the city. So we had this kind of, we vicariously kind of lived our dream through.
You
their work.
mentored all these
And
films.
mentored them along. We worked with them.
We worked with. Okay. So, you know, one of the strongest elements in your films, I mean, Sacha is one example. Strongest element in your films is there is a visual quality to them, which goes beyond any quote unquote message or discourse that you're attempting to have through that film. And that stands on its own. I'll just read a quote from Rutherford, which you have quoted in your book. The first thing one notices about Sacha is the sensory qualities of the image. It is a musical montage of rhythms, the relentless churning of machinery in the textile mills. The relentless churning of machinery in the textile mill frames coils of cotton that unwind languorously onto a spindle, and workers' faces are masked by twisting strands of thread-like enormous cat's cradle. The film captures and releases fleeting moments of sensory intensity. Light passes across piles of colored jujubes glistening in a glass case. Light in a glass case in a cafe. Drops of water light up momentarily on the table, reflecting pressing traffic. Deep red tomatoes and baskets of green chilies shine in the sunlit street market. Baroque gargoyles keep silent watch as endless feet stream up a staircase behind elaborate brass balustrades out of the railway station. So this, I mean, this is a very lyrical description. That's why I picked that out. But there is some, your films are not merely quote unquote messages. They are like paintings, you know, they're like moving paintings. So that's extraordinary. And I think the best, one of the best illustrations, Sacha is a great example because it ties in with with the theme of the city. But your Kutch trilogy has both music and mesmerizing imagery. You made 3 films on the itinerant musicians of Kutch. So while there is the theme of communal harmony and all of that, you know, the cross-border tensions, the artificial border between 2 countries which never existed and which doesn't make sense to the people who live there, there's this, you know, beauty, art for art's sake, if I may call it that. So tell us about that. What is driving your imagination? You want to speak about it?
No, it's just come on.
It's your baby, perhaps, because you are the cinematographer. You are credited as
Collaborative work. And, so, you know, when we went to Kutch for the first time, we were in the stores. So what struck us was the idea that Kutch, in spite of it being in Gujarat, has remained a oasis of calm. There's been no violence
in Kutch.
in Kutch, at least to the best of my knowledge today, but things are changing probably. So we were struck by it, and then we met these communities who kind of had these divine musical practices, which are aesthetically, of course, very significant. But we probably we were wondering what is it that makes this place tick. So I think we are almost sure now is that these skillful traditions, probably not little, but these Sufi traditions, they are not just aesthetic practices.
Exactly.
They are bulwarks against this rabid kind of religiosity that's growing around us, which we see, you know, engulfing all of us and kind of, you know, and pulling us into a vortex of hate, so to speak. So probably these traditions are not. It's not music or it's just dance or, you know, there's nothing. And
Much more than that.
its disappearance is not just a death of yet another tradition,
Right.
but it's a disappearance is yet another threat to what we call democracy, what we call equity, social justice. So their disappearance, their preservation is not just a preservation as if in a museum, as you know, just preserve something that for posterity, that your great grandchildren could hear what this music was, but it is an important resource against this religiosity. So that's what made us look at the space, and we found that the space itself is amenable to this Sufi kind of, it's large, vistal landscapes where you would feel like a small an ant walking on the horizon, vast expanses of land, which is very, Sufi-esque in some sense. So that's what.
In fact, the first scene of one of your Dutch films, I forget specifically which one, Do Din Ka Mela, where there's this 5-minute shot. Is it 5 minutes? Or
3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes, yeah, of those camels passing.
Oh, they are not Nil guys.
Nil guys, sorry, yeah, Nil guys.
So when I took that shot,
Hmm.
so it's the basic idea of Sufism. I thought is kind of inherent in that shot. I mean, I'm not saying that it does have, but this is my idea, or it's attempting to capture that idea. So the idea is that for example, we have our agendas in our lives, but we do not know what's going to happen the next instant, which is what Sufism is all about. It's telling you that look, transients of life. We think that everything is under control, but life has its own way of striking back at you. Tomorrow is not for us to see. So I set up this shop. First I said, okay, I found these Nil guys coming, which is a million possibility that 4 of them, walking on the horizon. So I, first of all, like a camera person, I started capturing them. Then I said, forget about it. I just set the camera on, let's see what happens. So that act of setting up the shot is an act of control. That's what I decided to. But what happened later is something that I had no clue about. So, and they walked across, 4 of them, and it took 3 minutes to do. So that also does an interesting thing for me as an editor, which I would be later. That it edited itself, because when they came in, the shot started, and when they went out, life ended. So and this is something that we have kind of become a part of our image making in the other films as well. So
Just bearing witness to.
Bearing witness, yes.
Yeah.
So, but with a sense of control, obviously. I mean, I want to relinquish control.
That's fair enough. So, especially in the Kutch film, but not necessarily limited to the Kutch film, there seems to be, for want of a better word, a kind of underlying note of quote unquote spirituality in your films. One good example of very explicit spiritual discourse is Matwala in your YCP 1997. The Italian drummer plays tabla and who is incarcerated Yerwada prison for whatever reason. So his speeches in that, his little interventions are very explicitly almost Vedantic in nature. And I understand your PhD, Jayasankar, was involved it had a reference to Vedanta. Was that correct?
Yes, I mean, I look at the idea of subjectivity and the relationship with language in structuralism, post-structuralism, hermeneutics, and Advaita. So it's kind of trying to find it's like looking at our own schizophrenic and as a post-colonial being, looking at various discourses that one is kind of have encountered and trying to make sense of what is this that connects or disconnects them, and where do I stand vis-a-vis this discourse. So Matwala's or Sufi music kind of immediately speaks to us because of our because that's something that is
and speaks to me also. I mean, that really lights me up. So there is perhaps I don't know, because spiritual is a bad word now, but certainly let's say there is your exposure to Advaita Vedanta has informed some of your practices. It would be correct to say, or am I imagining?
Yes, so but also an artistic practice is not always programmatic. I mean, it kind of happens.
No, it's it's not. I'm not saying that you are explicitly applying those things, but there is a, let's say, a synergy between them.
Of course.
So a harmony or a
Yeah, certain kind of
Common.
concerns that is kind of gleaned out of my own experience
Yes.
as a human being and my exposure, my education, and they all probably you find them in that film. And also, we were part of an institution which was social work institution, which has also committed to social justice and equity. So it's a cocktail of all that.
It's absolutely, yes. But that sort of resonance, let's put it that way, I do find.
Yeah.
Because when you look at those first 3.5 minutes of your Kutch film, Do Din Ka Mela, it's a meditative, like an extended meditation, and it's a extraordinary moment, piece of cinema.
Yeah, but we also would like to say that for for the sake of spirituality, we don't want to lose sight of
No,
the
that's why I
political.
said that's what I said. I was very tentative. I heavy
No,
quotes
no,
are not because it's precisely because of this.
Yeah, and I'm just resonating with this idea over here. I'm just kind of heading on to it.
So your background is in sociology, no, before you came to cinema. And so what
Actually
how
quite
did
mixed.
your background impact your vision?
Yeah, I did my bachelor's in psychology, my master's in economics, and then my PhD in sociology much later. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm a totally indisciplined person. But I think what really has moved me is my interest in people and interest in communities. And that is something that, I think all my sort of meandering through various disciplines came from that love for engagement with people and with communities and listening to them, what they have to say, and learning from them, being vulnerable to them in a sense, So I think so, though we are very different in terms of our skills, our practice in some ways, I think we kind of complement.
Yeah, you're
Each other.
outstanding jugalbandi. That's clear. With all these
Yeah.
films, both of you are made together. It's not like,
Yeah.
and I imagine why you wouldn't be able to make it without each other. It's a true collaboration.
That's right.
So that curiosity, that interest in knowing what makes people tick, what makes communities tick, learning from them, collaborating with them, is something that I think has
And a concern with justice.
concern with justice,
Yeah.
of course, that's
Yeah.
paramount. That has been for me kind of life affirming and
Life.
very important for my own growth as an artist as well as a person.
So both of you retired from PISS maybe 5 years ago or thereabouts?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
And but you're still making film. So I believe you've just made a film called Lipi the Libertad. Tell us about that film.
Yeah, it's a film about a 102-year-old freedom fighter who's
Who's still around.
Still around, is very active, and it's not released yet. But it is. She she grew up in Bombay, and she went to Siddharth College, and Baba Saheb Ambedkar gave her admission to Siddharth College, and she was influenced by M.N. Roy, who was around at that point. And also, it's a kind of a brush with history, so to speak. And she kind of ran a pirate radio station from the jungles of Maharashtra, and then moved to Karnataka, the bordering over, which was broadcasting anti-imperial content, anti-Portugal content, anti-colonial content.
For 6 years.
6 years.
In Portuguese and Company.
Portuguese company, and she lived with this man called Vaman Sardesai, who she was married much later. She spent time between 1955 and 61 in mostly near Castle Rock, in the borders of Karnataka.
It's in Karnataka.
Yeah, and what really sort of attracted us to her and to the story was the kind of feisty spirit that she has, and
I've seen the film.
yeah. So for us was like even working with her has been really quite interesting.
Right.
To have somebody who even at the age of 102 sort of faces life with such courage and dignity and, never say die kind of attitude, I think was quite marvelous. So it's been a very interesting journey making this film with her. Probably it's a little different from our other films, but I would hope that some of the same ways of looking at the world and looking at people still resonate there.
Wonderful. So let me remind you of a quote from your book, which features on page 164. Page 164 you say, in many of our films, we have worked with the poetic register. Poetry opens windows to the secret life that words leaked behind our backs, bringing to the fore non-representational narrative modes. So I'd like to end this wonderful conversation with some poem that you can recite, one of you can recite or both of you can recite, which kind of summarizes your... Shall I say one?
Okay, I'll say about it, you recite it and then I'll translate.
Okay.
So yeah, this is a short poem that Jayasankar wrote when he was 18.
Oh, he wrote it himself?
Himself,
Wonderful,
yes.
wonderful.
And I mean, I felt that it was quite profound for an 18-year-old to write like that. And it's in Malayalam, it's written in Malayalam, but
Which we won't understand.
Yes, but I'll translate it. So Jayasankar will recite it in Malayalam and I will read out the translation.
Sure.
It was published in my college magazine, and here I suppose things are going to go very wrong. It's a very tragic end to this conversation. Okay.
Whatever it is.
So it goes like this. Ende gandhangalil mulgi njan ninne thediyo, ninde gandhangalil mulgi njan enne thediyo. The title of the poem is Narcissus.
And I'll read the translation. Drenched in my sense, did I seek you? Or, drenched in your sense, did I seek me?
Wonderful.
Youthful indiscretion.
So on that really nice note, thank you very much Anjali Monteiro and K.P. Jayasankar for this
Thank you,
very
Sujeet.
stimulating conversation.
Thank you. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
So did I. Thank you.